Morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Today we're going to talk about an extremely important molecule that is going to be tied into basically everything we do. Whether we talk about it directly or not, it is constantly involved in our cells and every chemical reaction, and that is the molecule adenosine triphosphate, also known as ATP. All right, and here's its chemical structure that we have here, made up of phosphoruses, oxygen, hydrogens, carbons, and nitrogens. A lot of those basic elements that we talked about earlier in the year that are fundamental for life. All right, so before I even start talking about it, the purpose of ATP, I'm going to talk about the purpose of ATP, why we use it, or it's used for energy, how we get that energy, all right, and then how do we reuse it. All right, and before I can talk anything about that, we got to go back to a little bit of physical science chemistry. All right, we got to talk about this idea of energy in bonds. All right, so each one of the little lines here represents a chemical bond, a relationship between the electrons of atoms. All right, in this case here, since these are actually all non-metals, these are all covalent bonds. And some of them we have single covalent bonds, and the double lines means double covalent bonds. Every bond has energy, for lack of a better word, stored inside of it. It took energy to make that relationship, that bond. And so that when you break that bond, energy is released, and that energy can be used for lots of different things. It can be used elsewhere. So every time you break a chemical bond, energy is released. You're going to have to keep that in mind as we talk about this, because that is a foundation about this. So let me tell you a little bit about adenosine triphosphate. You do not need to memorize the actual or the structure of it, but there is something about it that's very, very important as we keep talking about this. All right. So we have our adenosine molecule, which is this kind of big part right here, and then we have this idea of a triphosphate. All right, which is going to be very, very important. This right here is a phosphate group. Make sure I'm blocking this. Oh, here we go. Here is one phosphate group. Two phosphate groups, three phosphate groups. All right, we have three phosphate. Sorry, that's not supposed to go there. It's supposed to go here. All right, it's three phosphate groups. All right, triphosphate. Three phosphates. 1, 2, 3. It's phosphate because that P is for phosphorus, that atom phosphorus. All right, so we have adenosine triphosphate. All right, and so what happens is you have this relatively small molecule floating everywhere throughout your cell, in and out of the cytoplasm, and every organelle, floating around the cell membrane, everywhere. They are everywhere. All right, and if the cell needs something done, it needs energy to do it. Just like you, if you're going to get something done today, you're going to need energy to do it. So you have to fuel up and provide something to provide that energy for you. Anytime the cell needs to do something, whether it's do the steps necessary to divide, the energy necessary to replicate DNA, the energy necessary to break down the food, to create the proteins, anything, to create certain types of cell transport going in and out of the cell, we need ATP, we need energy to do that. And that energy comes from these little floating batteries called ATP. I like to think of them as batteries, all right? And so it's what we call the ATP cycle. All right. So we have an ATP. All right. Like I said, I like to think of this as a charged battery. I like to think of it as a charged battery. And it's charged because it's got all three of its phosphates. All right. And so the cell needs some sort of energy to perform some sort of function. All right, it needs energy to do this. All right, and so what it's going to do, all right, here's this kind of the cycle part of it. All right, what's going to happen is it's going to break off one of its phosphates. It's going to remove a phosphate. Remember, there's chemical bonds here, and each one of those chemical bonds contain energy. If you break off one of those phosphates, there's energy that is going to be released. All right. So we remove a phosphate. All right. We remove a phosphate, leaving us with, all right, just two of them now at this point. we break off that one. When we break off that one, energy is released. All right, energy is released outward. All right, that energy can go do something that we need it to do. But now we have this not triphosphate, but now we're only down to 2. So now we have ADP, right? So now we're down to ADP. All right, I like to think if that is a charged battery, we just used its energy for something else. So now we have what I like to think of as a dead battery. All right, we have a dead battery there, but your cells are extremely efficient. It just doesn't throw away dead batteries. It reuses, recycles. Your cells are the epitome of efficiency when it comes to materials, all right? Because it always wants to survive and provide a function for the organism, all right? And so what's going to happen here is now we have this dead battery. Where are we going to charge up this dead battery? Let's think in the cell. Where is energy provided from in the cell, in our cells? What structure in our cells provides us energy? The mitochondria. And it's the mitochondria's job to do this, is to recharge this battery. People like to say mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. That's okay. That's like saying, like if these are like batteries, that's like saying that the Energizer factory is powering my flashlight. No, the Energizer factory just makes the batteries that I use to power my cells or my flashlight. All right. What the job of the mitochondria is the location where we recharge these dead batteries back into charged batteries. All right. So what happens here? All right. We're at the mitochondria here. We're at the mitochondria here. All right, what's going to happen is we are going to add a phosphate. All right, it's going to add a phosphate. So I'm going to go back to all right, now when I broke a bond, I released energy, which means to do this, I need to add energy to reform this. That energy comes from the breaking down of glucose. All right, this whole process right here, and it gives us back to that ADP or ATP. This whole blue process I drew right here is what we call cellular respiration. And I only bring that up right now because we are going to talk more about that as we go on. All right, so we have ATP, we break off a phosphate, we can use that energy for all kinds of things. Creates a dead battery known as ADP. That ADP goes to the mitochondria, that energy put in to reattach that phosphate, and a process called cellular respiration. That's the whole job. This what's happening right here is called cellular respiration, using glucose to reattach phosphates to recharge that battery, and then that battery can go off and do other things. All right. So the mitochondria is not necessarily a powerhouse of the cell; it's more of a recharging station for the cell. All right. So that's a little bit about what we call the ATP cycle. Talk a little bit about structure. Talked about what is ATP and how it uses or breaks off or releases energy. And then how that ADP is then recharged using cellular respiration. All right. All right, so that one's a little bit different because it's a lot of chemistry in there, but this is a video that's not bad to come back to often because ADP and ATP are involved in every cell function that we need. If we need energy, it's created by this molecule. We think as the food that we eat is what creates us the energy. It's actually that food that we eat that recharges those batteries. That does that. All right. So All right, that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching. Good luck, and may the science be with you.